In today's episode, we delve into 4 devastating incidents in which orc trainers risked their lives spade. From a rising star whose graceful underwater routines in San Diego proved to be her downfall, to a former Navy diver who ignored safety protocols in Texas. But first, let's start with first story in which a single mistimed hand command turns a choreographed performance into a nightmare. It was June 12, 2013, and the afternoon sun burned over SeaWorld in San Diego, California. The huge outdoor stadium buzzed with anticipation as families filled the concrete stands. Children clutched plush orcas and excitedly pointed to the crystal clear show pool below. The water glittered under the Californian sun. Its surface was occasionally broken by the massive black and white shape of Titan, the main character of the park. At 9 years old and over 3,600 kilograms, he wasbathed the main attraction and the most unpredictable animal in the enclosure. Claire Benson stood at the edge of the pool, her wetsuit shining as she went through the choreography one last time. At 27, she was the rising star of SeaWorld, promoted faster than any other trainer in the history of the park. Her background was unique, a former ballet dancer with a degree in marine biology before moving into performance training. This combination dirt her when she moved with her legs in performances that were more like an underwater ballet than a traditional sea show. But Claire had private concerns that she rarely shared with the management. Inherent her training protocols, she had noted Titan's increasingly erotic behavior during the training sessions. Some days he responded perfectly to every command. On others he seemed distracted, almost aggressive, ignored signals that he had mastered months before. This inconsistency worried her, but SeaWorld's schedule required the show to go on. The stadium held 1,800 that afternoon people, mostly families on summer vacation. The show was the main attraction of SeaWorld, a 45-minute spectacle with synchronized swimming, high-speed pursuits and Titan's famous maneuver, a jump from over 6 meters height. Wicklets of water poured over the front rows of enthusiastic spectators. Orcas, also known as killer whales, are actually the largest members of the dolphin family. In the wild, they are apex predators, capably known to hunt great white sharks and even blue whales. Adult males such as Titan can reach a length of up to 8 meters and weigh more than 5,400 kilograms. Their intelligence is comparable to that of great apes. They have complex social structures and communication systems that scientists are still trying to decipher. In captivity, however, this intelligence can become problematic. Orcas are known to exhibit ranging from playful mischief to calculated aggression, often triggered by stress, boredom or confusion. The show began flawlessly. Claire glided along with Titan through the water. Their movements were perfectly synchronized, while music echoed through the stadium. The first 20 minutes went exactly as rehearsed. Titan responded to every hand signal, every whistle, every subtle change in the audience cheered as he catapulted himself into the air. His massive body seemed to hover in the air for a moment before crashing back into the pool. 10th signature sequence, a complex choreography in which Claire signaled Titan to dive deep to the surface directly beneath her and dramatically drop her about 4.5 meters out of the water. Claire raised her right hand and gave the dive signal. But in her concentration on the energy of the audience, she raised her hand 3 seconds too early. Titan, who was already started to dive, had suddenly lost the rhythm of the choreography that he had practiced hundreds of times. Claire immediately realized her mistake and dove towards Titan in an attempt to reorient him and to save the sequence. She swam directly towards his head, her hands outstretched in the correction signal that he had practiced countless times in training. But Titan interpreted their quick approach differently. For him, Klaas's sudden disappearance seemed like the beginning of a game that she summoned at him's brief training sessions. His massive jaws opened slightly, and he moved approaching them with the gentle precision he normally uses when carrying toys or interacting with trainers while playing. His teeth, each as big as a human thumb, closed around CL's upper body just below her ribcage. The pressure was instant and overwhelming. Her wetsuit was compressed, then torn. Ribs broke with a crack so loud that you could hurrowing over the music in the stadium. Titan began to descend, taking Claire with him down to the 10.5-meter deep pelvic floor. The audience initially thought it was part of the show. Some applauded, even assuming Claire's slack posture was meant for acting. But theatre coaches knew immediately that something had gone catastrophically wrong. Emergency protocols should have been implemented within seconds, but the confusion about whether this is a planned process or an accidental delayed the reaction by almost 2 minutes. Titan reached the bottom of the pool and let go of Claire, but she was already unconscious. Her body floated limply in the water while he circling her and occasionally poking her with his rust. Then, without warning, he grabbed her again and shot with her to the surface. Titan rushed up from below, grabbed Claire and hurled her violently over the surface before pulling her underwater in a violent whirlpool of water and blood. Water splashed over. The first 10 spectators came in. Children screamed. Parents grabbed their families and began to run towards exits. But Titan wasn't finished. He dived again, this time with Claire in his mouth, and brought them into the deepest part of the pool. Emergency teams triggered the release devices, threw bait into the water, and closed the control gate. But Titan avoided everything, guided by the same instinct and intelligence that make orcas top hunters in the wild. 8 agonizing minutes, he held her, occasionally bringing her to the surface, only to be confronted again with her when the trainers finally managed to rescue to using emergency protocols, food rewards, and several carers. Titan Claire had to separate them for the next 10 minutes, repeatedly pulled underwater, surfaced with her only long enough for her to survive, but never long enough to catch her breath. Paramedics tried to resuscitate her for 45 minutes, but she had drowned long before she could even be rescued from the water. The official cause of death was drowning, although the injuries from Titan's first bite were fatal even if rescued immediately. SeaWorld was immediately faced with lawsuits from CL's family, who accused the park of have ignored repeated warnings about Titan's erratic behavior. Internal documents showed that Claire had submitted 3 separate incident reports in the months before her death, in which she described worrying changes in Titan's behavior during training sessions. The case was settled out of court for an undisclosed sum was settled. Titan was removed from public appearances, but remained at SeaWorld. The park stated that he was too psychologically damaged to be relocated, and too dangerous to continue. He spent his remaining years in a smaller holding basin, shielded from the public until his death from kidney failure in 2019. But it would not be the last time a coach paid with his life. Marcus Hale believed his Navy diving experience would protect him as he entered Luna's pool alone. But military training meant nothing for a 14-year-old orc with fears of abandonment. It was August 5, 2011, and the humid Texas heat pressed like an oppressive blanket over Marine Sun Park in Galveston. Behind the scenes, far from the audience and cameras, the facility's training pools lay quietly in the afternoon sun. The main pool for the performances reflected the cloudless sky. Its surface was occasionally illuminated disturbed by the massive figure of Luna, a 14-year-old female orc who has been heard not performed in public for over a year. Marcus Howell stood at the edge of the pool and went through his morning session. At 34, he was the most experienced trainer at Marine Sun, a former Navy diver who, after 2 deployments in the Persian Gulf, switched to working with marine mammals. His military background gave him a self-confidence in dealing with large, potentially dangerous animals, which other trainers found both impressive and disturbing. Marcus believed in direct contact, in a practical training method that was increasingly being abandoned in the industry. Luna was removed from the shows, where she showed ownership of a trainer during a routine meeting, refused to let go until emergency protocols were activated. Since then, she has undergone behavioral rehabilitation, but progress was slow. The park's new policy required so-called protected contact training, working with the animals across barriers or from the edge of the pool, without direct water contact. Marcus had opposed these changes and insisted that this relationship with Luna requires physical contact to be effective. The training facility was almost empty that afternoon. Most of the employees had already gone home. Only Marays and a small emergency crew stayed behind to carry out the evening feeding. Luna drifted in the middle of her tank, her massive dorsal fin sliced through the water as she circled lazily. With a length of 6 meters and a weight of almost 4,100 kilograms. It was smaller than male orcas, but by no means less powerful. Orcas are highly social animals with complex emotional needs. In the wild, females like Luna spend their entire lives in their family groups, developing complex relationships and hierarchies. In captivity, this social structure is disrupted, often leading to psychological stress and disruptive behavior. Luna was previously used intensively for breeding programs and had 3 calves, all of which were transferred to other facilities. These separations had caused her what several behavioral researchers call attachment disorders. She developed strong bonds with individual trainers and responded aggressive when these relationships were disturbed. The last entry in Luna's training log described unexpected refusal to let go reaction, something that Marcus downplayed as capriciousness. Marcus worked with Luna for 3 years, longer than any other trainer in the facility. He understood her moods, preferences, and triggers better than anyone else. But he also had a tendency, treating her more like a large, intelligent pet than a wild predator that without malice could kill. That afternoon Marcus made a decision that would cost him his life, despite explicit instructions to follow the protected contact protocols. He decided to use Luna's pelvis for what he called a relationship building session. He entered the water with full wetsuit, but without safety equipment. The pool's emergency systems were functional, but there was no second trainer present who could have activated it if necessary. Marcus had sent away the security observer who was supposed to monitor all water contacts and said that the meeting will be short and routine. Luna approached him immediately. Her massive head broke through the water surface just a few meters away. For a few minutes, everything was normal. Marcus stroked her rust around and performed basic conditioning exercises, rewarding her with fish and positive reinforcement. Luna seemed calm, even loving. She snuggled gently against him and allowed him to stroke her dorsal fin, and her flipper touched. But orcas are unpredictable, and Luna's calm demeanor concealed the psychological instability. which had led to her removal from the shows. After about 10 minutes of interaction, something changed in their behavior. Marine behavior researchers, who later analyzed the surveillance footage, noticed that Luna's body language changed subtly. Her movements became more targeted, her attention more focused. Marcus floated near the middle of the pool with his back to Luna, while her training gushed as she struck. With the silent efficiency that makes orcas top predators, she approached from behind and grabbed his upper body with her jaws. The first bite shattered 3 ribs and pierced his left lung, but Marcus remained conscious. Luna began to dive and pulled Marcus towards the approximately 12 meters deep pool floor. He fought, kicked around in panic, and punched her rust around. But his efforts were in vain in the face of her immense strength. She held him for almost 3 minutes long underwater before she surfaced. Marcus's body remained firmly in her mouth. Instead of letting go, Luna, with what marine behaviorists call object play, a behavior in which orcas manipulate objects in her environment for entertainment or stimulation. She threw Marcus's body into the air, caught him again, and dived again. Each impact broke more bones and caused massive internal injuries. The security officer monitoring the facility's cameras noticed the disturbance and activated the emergency protocols. But Luna did not respond to the recall signals and food rewards, which usually lured her to the edge of the pool. For over 10 minutes she continued her deadly game, devingled innately with Marcus's body and brought him back to the surface. Since there were no other trainers on sit-and only one guard was monitoring the security cameras, several long minutes passed before help arrived, and even longer until someone could intervene. When Luna finally released Marcus's body, he had been underwater for almost 15 minutes. Paramedics tried to resuscitate him for over an hour, but he suffered massive blunt trauma to his chest and abdomen and also drowned. He was found at the scene of the crime. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, immediately initiated investigation and ultimately fined Marine Sun Park $75,000 for had not enforced its own safety protocols. Marcus's family filed a lawsuit for negligent killing, claiming that the park had created a dangerous work environment by tolerating rule violations. Luna was isolated for 6 months, while behavioral scientists assessed her mental state. Eventually, she was transferred to a modified training program, but never performed in public again. The incident led to industry-wide changes in training guidelines. Direct water contact was banned in most facilities, but the tragedy was far from over. Jennifer Lai believed that the darkness of an evening performance would performance additional drama. Instead, she created the perfect conditions for a deadly miscommunication. It was March 14, 2010, and the sun had already set hours ago above the Pacific Marine Theater in Orlando, Florida. The facility's famous evening show was about to begin and transformed the demonstration pool into an underwater light show that attracted tourists from all over the country. Colored lights illuminated the water from below and created an ethereal blue-green glow that illuminated the massive figure of Blaze. An 11-year-old male orca appeared almost supernatural as he glided through the depths. Jennifer Lai stood at the edge of the pool and adjusted her wetsuit one last time before the show began. At the age of 29, she was one of only 2 trainers available for the evening performances of Pacific Marinesa, an award that reflects months of specialized training and an impeccable safety record. Her background in theater made her the ideal choice for the program. She understood timing, choreography, and the dramatic elements that made these evening shows so popular with the audience. The evening performance was Pacific Marine's most ambitious production, a combination of live performances with animals, synchronized lighting, music, and special effects. The pool weighs exclusively through underwater lights, creating a dreamlike atmosphere in which trainers and Orca seemed to be dancing an aquatic ballet together. But the same lighting that made the show so magical also created dangerous blind spots and visual distortions that made it impossible to see in daylight blaze. Had been performing in evening performances for over 2 years without any incident, with a length of about 6.7 meters and a weight of almost 4,500 kilograms. It was smaller than some male orca, but perfectly suited for the precise choreography required by the evening's program. HARROWING completed over 500 performances and was considered one of the most experienced show animals in the facility. The theater was filled with 2,200 spectators that evening, mostly adults who had come specifically for the performance was presented as a more challenging alternative to the family-friendly daytime. Programs marketed with complex choreographies and dramatic lighting effects that create a mystical atmosphere. They rely heavily on echolocation to orient themselves in their environment. They use sound waves to create detailed mental maps of their environment. In the wild, this biological sonar system allows them to hunt in complete darkness and to navigate in murky water with the highest precision. In captivity, however, the artificial lighting and acoustic environment can impair this natural ability, leading to confusion and disorientation, phenomena that do not occur in nature. The underwater lights used for the evening shows and spectacular for human spectators look can create glare and shadows that significantly reduce the spatial awareness of an orca. The show began with Jennifer entering the water while Blaze performed a series of elegant diving maneuvers along the edge of the pool. The underwater lighting cast changing patterns on the trainer and the animal, so that seemed as if they were floating through space rather than swimming in a concrete pool. The first 30 minutes passed flawlessly. Blaze responded perfectly to Jennifer's hand signals and positioning signals. The fatal sequence began during the climax of the show, a choreography in which Jennifer was in the middle of Tollison, while Blaze performed a series of high-speed passes around her. The light was so programmed to follow Blaze's movements, creating dramatic shadows and light accents as he but. It was precisely these effects that thrilled the audience that made it almost impossible for Jennifer to maintain visual contact with the massive animal. As Blaze finished his third lap, Jennifer lost him in the constantly changing play of light. The underwater lighting created a disorienting, stroboscopic effect that made it difficult to correctly estimate one's position and speed. Moved slightly away from its intended position, probably about 1 meter. The deviation was small by human standards, but it put Jennifer right in Blaze's path as he began his 4th round. Jennifer raised her left hand to give a position signal, a hint to Blaze to slightly change his trajectory, but with the underwater lighting and Jennifer's changed position, Blaze used the gesture as a signal for a back ride, a routine in which he appeared directly under a trainer and lifted it out of the water on his back. Blaze changed course and accelerated, shooting at full speed from the depths of the pool upwards. But instead of gently riding under Jennifer's surface, he struck her sideways with devastating force. His massive head, Blaze, rose with such force that the impact was fatal, hit Jennifer in the middle of her body and hurled her against the concrete wall off the pelvis. The impact was catastrophic. Jennifer's body hit the ground with a sickening crack, the edge of the pool, a sound that could be heard even above the music of the show. Her spine was compressed, ribs shattered, internal organs were crushed by the enormous force. She bounced off the wall and fell limply into